A fresh sheet of ice awaits, marking the turn of a new season. One by one, the arena lights awaken, ready to shine on the game's elite. For 30 teams, optimism abounds, energized for the rigorous journey ahead. And for each team, a different story and challenge presents itself. A historic franchise looking to right the ship with a new captain at the helm.
We need to put Canada's team back on the map.
An underdog squad looking to prove last year's success was beyond a fluke. A lottery ball falls in favor of a city so desperate to return to its championship glory. Tonight, from coast to coast, we cover the teams and players hoping to write their own stories in this new season. Heading out on the long and winding road from Game 1 to the Stanley Cup Final. It's the Hockey Central Season Preview Show on the home of hockey's brightest stars.
Good or bad, the NHL regular season is upon us as we get set for the National Hockey League's full campaign. Darren Millard here with Elliot Friedman, Nick Kyprios, and Darren Pang. We only have 9 more months of this before we crown a Stanley Cup champion. Plenty to get to. Team-by-team reports from all 7 Canadian franchises, and the big news making its round as we approach the National Hockey League's full schedule, including the fact that Jaromir Jagr is going to bring back the mullet from 1990. Will you return to the style from 1990?
That's quite a possibility. I'll have to check with my barber.
What has your attention going into the schedule?
Steven Stamkos. We've seen great new shining contracts with the likes of Seabrook, Eric Johnson, Giordano, captain of Calgary, brand new contract. Where was Steven Stamkos' new contract? We know he's going into the last year. Potentially unrestricted free agency July 1st. Steven Stamkos wanted a new contract. Steve Yzerman talked about it. It never came. Why? They've got their doubts about him, and we'll see how long those doubts go into the regular season.
What about coaches? How many will be fired this year?
We're going to go in that area because we have to go in that area. I mean, last year after the disappointment that the St. Louis Blues had, who would have thought, and even Ken Hitchcock himself said the same thing, am I ready to have the energy to go at it again? No one's won more regular season games in the 4 years since Doug Armstrong made him the head coach. So he's had brilliant regular seasons with outstanding teams. Bruce Boudreau, the same thing. These guys have done a phenomenal job. You guys, any young coach in the NHL, how hard it is to resell every single game, it's hard. But it's not going to matter for these guys. It's all about the playoffs.
Talking about resell, somebody who sold this summer, the Toronto Maple Leafs on Phil Kessel. And, you know, I think this was a move the Maple Leafs had to make. They had to make a change. They had to do something. But the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be the beneficiary. This is a 40-goal season at least if he stays healthy. And we're all going to be fascinated to see where the Kessel train goes in Pennsylvania.
There's also that little story about the next Oilers superstar in Edmonton.
The Edmonton Oilers would like to select with their first pick from the Erie Otters, Connor McDavid.
He's officially an Edmonton Oiler.
To be honest, I think it was even better than I was expecting.
Expectations are so high in Edmonton now.
So exciting to hear your name called and go through all that.
The game just gets faster and faster in many ways. You got to be fast with your feet, fast with your hands, fast with your head. He's all those things.
That was unbelievable.
He was number 1 of the draft. Will he be number 1 in the Calder Trophy race?
Well, he's going to be there for sure. The question is, how far is Jack Eichel away from him? Everybody thought it was McDavid at the draft and everybody else. But Eichel sure impressed guys the last 2-3 weeks in Buffalo, and the gap might be tighter than many of us thought last June.
I also think when you're the number 1 pick that comes with you, like you're everybody's target. You don't think Kopitar, Getzlaf, Jonathan Toews, they're all hearing, I've heard all about Connor McDavid. I can't wait to get my piece of that, Darren.
I can't wait to see how the internal competition plays out. I mean, how many times we've been on teams where you have this expected superstar and everything gets pushed, everything gets elevated. How good is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins going to be alongside? And same with Taylor Hall. But there's some other great rookies out there as well. That Panarin in Chicago, he's going to play with Anisimov and Kane. He looks pretty darn good as well.
And while the Oilers hope that Connor McDavid can inspire a bump up with the forwards, how about the crease concerns in goal? There's a new man getting the number 1 job, and he already has an inspirational story to tell. Here's David Amber in Edmonton.
Side of the net to Ward. Across Baxter. Oh, what a glove grab by Talbot!
10 years before he was making highlights in the NHL, Cam Talbot's hockey future was in question.
As a 16, 17-year-old, how many offers did you get to play in the OHL?
None.
How many offers did you get at that age to go play for an NCAA Division I team?
None.
Instead of leaving the game, Talbot pressed on in the Ontario Provincial Junior Hockey League.
I was actually cut from the team at first, and then I went and tried out for another team, and they offered to bring me on as the third goalie, and then Hamilton didn't kind of want to release my rights, so they ended up finding a spot for me.
For 3 years, Talbot impressed in Hamilton, but only enough to luck into a last-minute NCAA scholarship at the least likely hockey destination.
Alabama Huntsville had a goalie that decommitted midsummer, wanted to go back to school, finish some classes and stuff like that, so they called me, and they're like, we need an answer in a couple days. I called them back a couple hours later, and I was like, I'll take it.
So the Canadian kid from Caledonia went down to Bama and did his best to fit in.
Food trucks or something like that, you could buy like fried alligator to eat. I tried it once, it kind of tasted like chicken.
On the ice, the transition was easier. Talbot set school records for minutes and saves, so despite his 15 and 50 record, the unthinkable happened. Talbot took his act from the back roads of Alabama to the bright lights of Broadway.
I guess it was kind of an unconventional journey, but a well-traveled journey, I guess you could say. I kind of worked my way through every level possible to get to this point, and I think that makes it that much more special.
With the Rangers, Talbot says he learned the mental part of the game from HENRIK Lundqvist. And last season, with the King injured, Talbot went from understudy to the lead role, making 24 straight starts, guiding New York to the President's Trophy, and winning the team's Extra Effort Award along the way.
This year's winner is number 33, Cam Talbot.
Now in Edmonton, Talbot is a centerpiece to what he hopes will eventually be a championship team.
This city is hungry for a winning team, winning organization, winning environment, and we're going to keep building from there. I think that the city is just going to explode with excitement, and like I said, it's going to be something special, and I hope I'm here for the long run for that.
David Amber back as the studio host or the panel on the Oilers hockey on Sportsnet. You can catch him on opening night for the Oilers against the St. Louis Blues, as well as November 6th when Sidney Crosby gets his first look at Connor McDavid. Edmonton's motivation once again coming 3 hours to the south. The Calgary Flames defied our expectations last season. Now, can they build on it? We sent Leah Hextall to find out.
There are 3 key elements to building a contender: age, development path, environment. The Flames' top line of Yuri Hudler, Sean Monahan, and rookie sensation Johnny Gaudreau led the Flames in scoring. The trio's shooting percentage soared well above the NHL average, and it's likely to happen again.
Pretty close off the ice, which, helps us on the ice as well. And a year playing together, we feel comfortable playing together and confident, and it's just going to improve, I think.
Adding fuel to the Flames' offense is their defense, which led the NHL in points last season despite an absent Mark Giordano. The captain's interrupted season to injury was felt throughout the blue line, especially by those who took on the task of filling his ice time. But with Giordano ready to return, the Flames' defense is set to produce on both sides of the puck.
We don't sacrifice any defense for offense. We take our chances when they're there. We're intimidating because other teams' forwards know if they get caught behind their net or finishing a check and they miss us, we're going the other way. We're going to try and create offense.
The Flames added even more depth to the already potent blue line with the acquisition of Dougie Hamilton. At 22, the defenseman has increased his career totals in each of his 3 NHL seasons and believes his new environment in Calgary will lend itself to future success.
Just watching some of the clips on some of the D and where they are in the O-zone and how they pinch and join the rush and everything, it's going to be exciting. So when you're that type of player, I think when you have the green light and you just have to know
when to use it.
Key components to the Flames' success last season are set to be prevalent yet again, but as always, there will be X factors. After an admirable playoff performance, will young prospect Sam Bennett become an everyday player for the Flames? Lance Boma, he was one of 8 Flames to have a career year in which he more than doubled his point production. But at 25 years of age and roughly 200 NHL games to his credit, was it simply an upshot year, or is this the development path that Boma will continue down?
Yeah, I want to be the player I was last year. Obviously, I want to improve on the year I had last year. I think it was a great year for me personally, but I'm not satisfied.
And neither are the Flames, the youngest team in the Western Conference, set to build off the experience of last season, proving hard work will outwork talent if talent doesn't work. The Calgary Flames are set to contend.
Hang out with the Calgary Flames on Sportsnet on opening night. Connor McDavid against Sam Bennett on October 17th. Early December, Peter Chiarelli and Dougie Hamilton face the Bruins for the first time, and then on New Year's Eve against the Los Angeles Kings. If there was pressure on Johnny Gaudreau last year just to prove himself, what's he facing right now?
Well, it's interesting. Like that piece hit all the names we expect, especially Dougie Hamilton, the guy everybody talked about this summer. But I think Gaudreau is the guy. He's the guy who really made the offense go. When he went up, they went up. And they're a home run hitting team, Darren. Long bombs from the defense. You know, with a year to look at him, everybody's going to be looking at Gaudreau and saying, how do we slow this guy down? How
3
he
on
handles
3 is going to be great.
Oh, yeah, how he handles it's going to be key.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting now to see where Hamilton fits in all of this. Listen, the big picture has the next few years. You've got Giordano at number 1 when it comes to depth, and Hamilton will ultimately be number 2. But let's not forget Brody. He's out still a couple more weeks with a broken bone. But the bottom line here is last year, arguably the 2 best dynamic duo in terms of pairs were Giordano and Brody. Now where does this fit in? Ultimately, who does Hamilton play? I consider Hamilton a very good player, but I still see him more prospect than I do proven right now. Brody, on the other hand, was money in the bank.
Well, Kipper, one thing that'll take some pressure off this great group of young defensemen is maybe playing with the lead instead of always trying to catch up. It was magnificent last year. They never gave up. You got to give their coaching staff a lot of credit. They're the 3rd best in the league that year. It'd be nice to play with the lead a little bit more often this year.
See how that whole 3 goalie thing shakes out
all
as
3
well.
good ones, too.
Straight ahead in the Hockey Central season preview show. Loved it when Kip said Brody. We break down the rule changes, including how the new overtime format may affect coaches' strategy. Can a newly constructed front office help bring the Leafs respectability? Our Scott Morrison has his opinion. Plus, our panel gives us its take on who will win it all this year. That and more when we continue. The Hockey Central season preview show continues with a visit to the film room and Sportsnet's Doug McLean. A couple of rule changes coming into play this season, one being 3-on-3 in overtime. So exciting in the preseason. But how long until people like you, coaches, get a handle on this thing and pull the reins in?
Well, I'm really counting on the fact that the coaches will not be able to ruin this. I think when you've got the best 4 forwards, best 2 defensemen, who will be used primarily in this, a lot of times they don't listen to coaches anyway, those top guys. So I don't really believe coaches will get into it. One way they can help is bench management. We saw a lot in the preseason, bad line changes. They've got to make sure the coaches, they don't allow this to happen. You take a look at the Montreal-Toronto game preseason. We've got a horrendous line change here by Delarose. All of a sudden, there's your bad line change, lazy line change, and all of a sudden, what have you got? You've got a great opportunity. JVR against a forward in Weiss, and all of a sudden you've got a game changer there. Here, you've got Vancouver, Edmonton, Pouliot, lazy line change. This could have been maybe called, and the referees, linesmen, would have to watch these long changes. But I'll tell you what, coaches can help with bench management. Good line changes are critical for the success of your team at overtime. Don't let them ruin the rest of it, though. Just line changes.
Might get a few too many men on the ice calls, too. The guys jumping on a little bit early. Coach's challenge of goals that are scored, potentially offside plays or goalie interference. Will coaches be more conservative in their use of timeouts? Well,
I think it's going to be interesting. If you take a look at the role here, got a situation Rangers-Washington last year. This is an icing call. Players tired on the ice. Coaches use this a lot. They've got to make a change. Games are too tight. You've got to win. Trotz calls a timeout here. Now what happens 7 minutes later in this game? A goalie interference situation. What happens? Used it for the timeout. can't call it in this situation. Are they going to be a little more careful with the use of the timeouts? Look, coaches are telling me we're coaching the same way. We want to win. We've got to use it when the game's on the line for an icing call and a change. It'll be interesting to see if they have it left.
There's Doug MacLean in the film room talking about rule changes for the 2015-2016 NHL season.
A short-handed goal. The Leafs, who had themselves a 3-1 lead, have seen it melt away.
So I thought it was real evident today we didn't have any juice.
The players will know exactly what is expected of them.
The coach is responsible and the big dogs are responsible. That's who's responsible.
Weiss was all alone. You could have taken a portrait. Nobody near him.
The people that you perceive as are good players were good enough. Not even close. You can't sugarcoat that part of it. So we're just going to have to fix it.
There are differing opinions on the plan being executed in Toronto, but the strategy to get through the initial steps, very obvious. Lower all expectations. Mike Babcock's done it. Scott Morrison reflects on it.
If it's true what they say, that adversity is the breakfast of champions, then we'll soon see if the Maple Leafs and their fans have the stomach for the job.
If you think there's no pain coming, there's pain coming.
And, just as importantly, if they all have the patience for it. It was another interesting summer in Toronto with several big-ticket signings, except they all came off the ice, where they restocked the front office. Babcock, Lamoriello, Lemaire, to name a few. All Cup winners, future and current Hall of Famers, bright minds and strong wills. That should tell you everything about where the Maple Leafs are after arguably one of their worst seasons ever, in which they won 11 of their final 51 games, and when the love and contempt of their fans both turned to indifference, the worst possible reaction. So sweeping changes were desperately needed, but so far, Phil Kessel is the only named player to be moved off the roster. What remains is the core group of a bad team, but Babcock has promised the slate is clean, for now. He loathes the word rebuild, but whatever it is the Leafs are doing, retooling, renovating, a restoration, it's going to require time and patience. And that's a combination neither the Leafs nor their fans have had much of over the years, with the Stanley Cup drought now at 48 years and counting, and with only one excruciating playoff appearance in the past 11 years. On one level, the three wise men now leading the organization have at least inspired hope in Leafs Nation and in the dressing room. But it is measured, or it should be. This is going to be a long process that requires the likes of Nylander and Marner, Riley and Gardner becoming impactful players. And it requires staying the course, no hitting the fast forward button. Remember this, yes, the Chicago Blackhawks have won the Stanley Cup in 3 of the past 6 years, becoming a modern-day dynasty. But prior to that, prior to reaching a conference final, they made the playoffs just once in a 10-year span, drafting Keith and Seabrook at the start of that run, Taves and Kane at the end. In between was a lot of that pain Babcock has mentioned. So let the restoration begin.
We're going to work hard to restore the Maple Leafs to their rightful place in the league.
Toronto starts with 3 games in 4 nights, the opening 2 on Sportsnet Wednesday, part of our doubleheader, and then on Friday with Mike Babcock back in Detroit for a regular season game. They get the first look at Phil Kessel in a couple of weeks. One thing became very apparent during the preseason. For all of his experiences in hockey, Mike Babcock has never gone through what he's experiencing right now in Toronto.
And does he have the stomach for potential 82 more games of something that might not look very appealing at times to season ticket holders? Hey, listen, it's one thing to talk about it when you're being introduced as the next head coach or in August, but it's another thing to live it on a day-to-day basis. We know he got $50 million because he's got this great reputation of being a winner, but part of that $50 million will be managing the day-to-day losses and whether or not he can set the tone.
You know what, Kipper? To me, the $50 million I'm investing, or the $8 million of it I'm investing in year 1, is all about this. Do the players get better? Does Nazem Kadri become a better hockey player? Does Dion Phaneuf take a turn back to what Dion Phaneuf should be? Does Jake Gardiner take a step to what people think that Jake Gardiner should be? I don't don't necessarily care about how Mike Babcock manages the wins and losses. I care, do the good players get better?
Well, Mike has great examples, though, in Detroit. He's got great examples of ultimate individual stars like a Pavel Datsyuk or a Henrik Zetterberg recently, and he turns it into a team concept. Without having Phil Kessel, this is going to help Mike Babcock, the coach, mold these players into what he wants them to be.
That's a big step from where they were a year ago. The last Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup is this country's favorite to do so this season. We know Montreal has a game saver in net. Now they hope they've found a game breaker up front. Here's Chantal Desjardins.
When the name Alex Semin pops up in Montreal these days, it's often associated with the word potential, because at 31 years old, the former 40-goal scorer still has it in spades. And now, with a new team and a second chance, the Russian forward is set to prove that he still has what it takes to play in the NHL.
31 years old, it's not old. I'm still younger, but I want to go play same like 5 years ago. Score a goal, win the game.
We all know that he got a tough season last year. Like I told him, I said, this is a fresh start, and as a coach, I believe in this potential. I saw him play in the league, and I saw him having success, so we're going to work closely with him to make sure that he's going to bring his game where it's supposed to be.
Semin has no shortage of talented teammates here in Montreal. Slotted in alongside former first-round picks Lars Eller and Alex Galchenyuk, and surrounded by a tight-knit leadership core, the hope is that Semin will help spark an offense that struggled last season, ranking just 20th in goals per game and 23rd on the power play.
To have a guy with so much skill, and because in this game everything is so quick, but if you're able to make the moves at the top speed and create space for yourself and for your line mates, I think it's really huge, and he definitely can do that.
The last time Semin signed a one-year deal was in 2012-2013 in Carolina during the NHL lockout, and he responded with an impressive 44 points in 44 games. And now, with just 1 year to prove to the Canadiens that he still has the desire and the talent to play at the highest level, Semin says his focus for the season is simple.
Help win the game and win the Stanley Cup.
Chantal Desjardins, Sportsnet, Montreal.
Thank you, Chantal. Montreal Canadiens play their first 4 on the road before going home to face the New York Rangers, and then they get Jack Eichel and Connor McDavid within a week. Getting back to Semin, is that a good gamble, given it's just a 1-year deal?
He's been the ultimate underachiever. It cost Carolina almost $14 million to move him along. I don't think you just find motivation because you're on a one-way deal, a 1-year deal. He's got to be a better player. He hasn't been a better player, and he hasn't been a motivated player.
Are they strong enough up the middle yet?
Are they strong enough to challenge and to go to a Stanley Cup final? And right now, that's a key question mark, in my opinion. Plekanec seems to be their best overall center iceman, but guess what? He's going in the last year of his deal, and whether or not he resigns remains a mystery. Galchenyuk's the key in all of this. Is he ready and mature enough to take his game to another level? Desjardins is what he is, a solid player down the middle of the ice, but Galchenyuk will be the key for Montreal coming out of the East.
With Eller and Semin to start the season. When we continue in the Hockey Central season preview show, with the NHL rosters being trimmed ahead of opening night, Elliot Friedman, Damian Cox bring us the latest in headlines and a big suspension. After a breakthrough year for a number of players, are the Senators prepared to shake the curse of the sophomore slump? And as we prepare to drop the puck, our experts weigh in on who will hoist the Stanley Cup when the final horn sounds.
Welcome to Hockey Central Saturday.
And last time I checked, no player in history ever got a 2-minute penalty for pushing.
I don't want the money, Kipper. I just want you to know I was right.
you went there. See, you threw me off on my thing. Shut up, will you?
Well, let's talk about sticks. You've got one of Phil Kessel's. I've got one of PJ Stock's.
And what's the over-under on the amount of pizza slices Elliot will have tonight?
I just want to say for the record that Nick was so passionate when he was doing that, he broke his pants.
It's Saturday night, the night. It's Hockey Night in Canada.
28 of the 30 teams will skate on the first Saturday night. George Stroumboulopoulos and the panel up at 6:30 Eastern Time. 3 early games, Ron and Don, after the first period, and then the second intermission features Saturday headlines.
Couple of suspensions today in the National Hockey League. First of all, on the ice, the league has suspended Raffi Torres 41 games for the hit to the head of Anaheim's Jacob Silfverberg that we saw in last weekend's exhibition action. Torres has been fined or suspended 9 times previously in his NHL career, and he can appeal this one. He can appeal it to the commissioner, and if he's not satisfied with that, he can take it to an independent arbitrator. But it will not be an easy road for Torres because, first of all, as we mentioned, he has had this happen to him before, and also because one of the more recent ones was 25 games, and the league could argue he did not learn from that behavior. The fine is also in the neighborhood of $440,000. During his career, Torres has been fined almost $625,000 for incidents on the ice. Another suspension was announced by the league and the Players Association jointly. Zach Kassian of the Montreal Canadiens, who was involved in an early morning car accident Sunday a.m. in Montreal, was placed in stage 2 of the substance abuse program. Now, the key to understand here is that a player in stage 2 is suspended without pay and cannot return to action until cleared by the doctors administering the program. There is no definite time until they say he can come back. He cannot play. Of course, the most important thing is that Kassian gets the help he needs. A couple of other things to watch for in the next couple of days. Pat Brisson, the agent for Anze Kopitar, and the Kings are scheduled to meet and talk again about his contract future. The hope, and there is some optimism, that something can get done in the next little while. And finally, watch the waiver wire on Tuesday. 22-year-old Canucks defenseman Frankie Corrado is there, and it would be a surprise if he is not claimed. Don't forget, Damien Cox joins me when these begin during the season.
Not always at your TV, but you don't want to miss your favorite NHL team play. Rogers NHL Game Center Live has you covered. You can stream games live to any device, your phone, your laptop, or tablet. And if you want to avoid regional restrictions on your big screen TV, you can even stream them through PlayStation, Xbox, Google Chromecast, and Apple TV. Game Center Live also has tons of special features, like this Thursday. Game Plus will have Connor McDavid ISOCAM when the Oilers play the Blues. And on opening night, Wednesday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, Game Center is your home to catch the banner raising in Chicago. In Ottawa, an unmentioned part about prospect Michael Wickstrand's decision to go back to Sweden is he doesn't have to worry about measuring up to last year's incredible freshman class, a process that sped up the succession plan in goal. Kyle Bukauskas has more.
After an improbable run to the postseason, the Ottawa Senators rewarded the unlikeliest of White Knights to a new contract.
Here's a chance. What a save! A hamburglar!
But if two's company, 3 NHL netminders is definitely a crowd. So this summer, Brian Murray had some decisions to make and ultimately settled on shipping Robin Lehner to Buffalo at the draft.
For me, it was a bit of relief that he was traded because the uncertainty in my life and my family of knowing that I'm going to be in Ottawa was kind of secured, and that was a good feeling.
It's no secret the Sens GM has a good feeling about his young core, as Stone, Zibanejad, Hoffman, Lazar, and Pajot are all back.
We want to build off the season we had last year, and everyone individually obviously wants to do as much as they can to contribute to the team's success, and that's the biggest part.
It's up to us to kind of emerge from being young players to being guys that are counted on in important times of the game, and I think that's really all you can worry about is making sure the details in your game are right, and you're just focusing on improving each day, and I think the rest will kind of take care of itself.
This is Dave Cameron's first full season as head coach of the Senators, and practicing with pace has been a philosophy of his from the beginning, as he hopes a miraculous stretch run like last year will not be necessary this time around. Kyle Bukauskas, Sportsnet, Ottawa.
All right, Kyle, thank you. Back with Darren Pang and Nick Kypreos. Welcome back to Elliot Friedman. I was surprised to hear how relieved Craig Anderson was to be the #1 guy.
Yeah, not really, when you know how insecure some of those goalies are, Darren Pang, over the years.
Chemistry and relationships that obviously I think he likes his new partner and likes his position.
No real love lost seeing Leonard leave to the Buffalo Sabres, but and Hammond did a terrific job last year. That record was incredible, helped Ottawa secure their playoff spot. But no question in terms whose team this is, and that's Craig Anderson. Hammond out now, maybe a couple of weeks with a pulled groin, but he has his $1.3 million a year contract, so he's solidified in that backup position. But this is, once again, Craig Anderson's team.
Well, other than Stone trying to be a goalie and blocking shots with his hand, he got nicked up again, not unlike what happened in the playoffs last year. I like this. Mark Stone is an old-school hockey player, strong on his stick, gets into the corners, doesn't lose many puck battles. MacArthur, Turris, and Stone have been excellent in training camp.
Bobby Ryan needs to get back to the level that we've seen him in the past. Straight ahead on the Hockey Central season preview show, the Ron Mobile is fueled up and ready to go. Ron McLean stops by to preview the road ahead for another season of Rogers Hometown Hockey on Sportsnet this season. With the focus on an aging core, the Canucks young stars look to take the next step this season. And now a three-time Stanley Cup champion, Jonathan Toews, sits down with George to talk the summer after the Cup and the retooled Blackhawks going forward. Got to know that music very well in the logo, Hometown Hockey, back for a second year. Here's the host, Ron McLean. Did you go to some place that you'd never been to last year?
Oh, absolutely. There were a couple of stops along the way that I'd been to St. John's. I'd never had seal meat. That's a highlight that stands out. But my two that were really special were Fort McMurray and Prince George. I had never been to Fort Mac despite growing up in Red Deer, Alberta, and I envisioned that it would be the tar sands, and it was anything but. It was beautiful boreal forest, two rivers, an incredible sports complex. And Prince George was neat. I met Ava Keese, who's now in North Bay at Nipissing College, playing for Darren Turcotte this year. Wow. First year after she won the BC Provincial Championships in midget hockey last year, and that's the way it went.
I got to go to the one in Brandon, and you were a great host with my family, my dad and his wife in the truck and hanging out. He thought he was part of the show by the end of it. Yeah. But you almost have to experience it firsthand.
Well, for you, Darren, that Brandon show, it was Grey Cup Sunday, and your father was in the truck. Kelly McCrimmon, who's a hero of yours, was in the mobile and brought lots of the Wheat Kings, and that was fantastic. And I remember there was a guy out there in a Dauphin Kings sweater, and you actually played goal in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. Yeah,
Quentin
so he was there.
Former teammate,
and that's your life, your hockey life, right there in Brandon. And this year we'll do Grey Cup. It's a game between us. It's often the case because it's a matinee. It's one of the few games that's not a Canadian matchup, but it's Detroit, Florida. Gerard Gallant coaching the Florida Panthers against Brad Richards in Detroit, and Brad is wearing sweater number 17 in honor of Gerard Gallant.
Is that right?
And Forbes Kennedy, two guys who wore 17 in the NHL. So there again is the kind of connection that you get on that show.
Okay, we know all the stories, but what about some games?
Well, some of the key, it's all about the stories and where guys come from. Mark Scheifele in Kitchener, Mike Hoffman in Kitchener, the very first show we do. But two key matchups are December 6th, we have Eichel versus McDavid, Buffalo, Edmonton from Brantford, Wayne Gretzky's town. And in March, we have Mike Babcock and the Leafs versus Detroit in Penticton, Ken Holland's town. So, and again, that'll be the fun. We've got so many Canadian teams, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary 5 times, Darren, McDavid and the Oilers 4 times, and everyone else at least 3. So it's a great schedule. Great idea.
Crisscrossing the country. Can you drive the truck at least once? Okay.
I want to be the co-pilot with Rick, get a drone, and show us on the road.
There's Ron McLean from Hometown Hockey. Certainly wouldn't leave that jacket lying around. You might need it in Kitchener. Week 1 this Sunday on Sportsnet. The Vancouver Canucks and the Calgary Flames on Scotiabank Wednesday night hockey. They'll see a lot of each other, and they kind of modeled the two franchises after each other. Here's Brad Fay.
The Flames ahead 4 minutes and 2 seconds away from eliminating Vancouver. Another remarkable Calgary comeback.
Not only did the Flames end the Canucks season in April, they also threw a little dirt on the age-old theory that you can't develop talent and win at the same time. Calgary's youngsters carried the day over Vancouver's veterans, which could ultimately serve to reshape the vision for the Canucks.
Youth is not a bad thing. People, it seems like on the outside, look at it like it's a bad thing, but no, they bring energy, they bring a lot of jump, they bring some excitement to their locker room, to the team. Those guys can play, they can skate, they can shoot the puck, and for us, if some young guys can make the lineup, it's going to be a bonus, that's for sure.
So the disappointment of the spring makes this the autumn of the Canucks youth. and certainly moves Bo Horvat's timeline up significantly.
This year, I think, I've played there. I know I can do the kind of stuff that I was doing last year, making the rushes and winning draws and, that kind of stuff. So I expect a lot more out of myself this year.
He's real important. We're looking, we gotta find ways to build a good core young group as well. And he's kind of the first guy in that group. He's the guy that's starting to, we're starting to kind of build around a little bit for the future. So I think he's a real key part to us.
For as long as most can remember around these parts, it's been said that the Canucks' success begins and ends with the Sedins. Of course, the end of their glorious career is much closer than the beginning now. But after Renaissance campaigns for both Henrik and Daniel last season, maybe that end isn't so imminent.
A lot of people say that we're not going to be here when the young guys are good enough to go deep, but I don't see that far down the road. It's going to be 1 or 2 years maybe, and then they're going to take the next step. And if we can keep playing at the level we think we can, I think we're going to have a good team down the road.
Brad Fay, Sportsnet, Vancouver.
Brad, the studio host for the Canucks on Sportsnet Pacific. This youth movement happened fast for the Canucks.
Well, I love it. I think it's such a great move for their team. I mean, why not? Isn't that the way it's supposed to be, that the best players make your team? And the fact is, we all know they get 9-game trials in a couple cases, and if they want to send them down and start again, they can do that too. But, I didn't like the fact they put Corrado on waivers. I thought that's something that they should have tried to avoid, and they could have. But the bottom line message is the best players are going to be on their team. Isn't that what pro sports teams are supposed to do?
And that youth movement's led by Bo Horvat. Mm-hmm. And think about where he was this time last season. Is he going to make it? Is he going to get to 10 games? Is he going back to London? No questions now. The experiment after the All-Star break was to move him in a better position to score. He did that last year with the majority of his goals. And the natural progression was for him to pick up where he left off, and he hasn't disappointed. He's a legitimate second-line centerman to start the NHL season.
And everybody's going to be better when your goaltender's better as well. I look for a huge bounce-back season from Ryan Miller. I mean, in a 2-year period, he's been on 3 teams, 3 different goalie coaches. He's looked very sound here in the preseason. I expect a big year.
Second year for Bo Horvat, trying to avoid the sophomore slump. Same sort of for Ryan Miller with that Vancouver Canuck organization. When we continue on the season preview show, with high expectations in Winnipeg, will the threat of losing 2 top players be a distraction? And George Stroumboulopoulos brings out the lighter side of Hawks captain Jonathan Toews.
Say hi to John Shannon and PJ Stock.
Now I get to work with John Shannon.
You can't beat this for top quality journalism, can you?
I don't know, Scott. Watch me.
I think it's serious. Now you have nothing else to say.
Yeah,
I just stole your line.
I have something to say, trust me.
Games for me
where
this whole thing becomes a full lottery.
I'm here too.
You are actually talking about people taking things a little farther.
Why?
What? It's a joke.
John Shannon and his yellow shirts will be back for the best preview show every Saturday on Sportsnet. At least that's what John wrote here. Here's to hoping that the winter is much kinder to Atlantic Canada this year, although there's a strong appetite for an extended whiteout in Winnipeg. Sean Reynolds has more on the Jets.
After bringing the playoffs back to Winnipeg and experiencing the awesome spectacle of a Winnipeg whiteout, the Jets expect big things this year.
And sky's the limits. It's, it's however we come together and as fast as we can.
Coming together will be key as the next step in the Jets' youth movement is taken. Names like Nikolai Ehlers, Andrew Kopp, Nick Petan, set to replace the significant number of veterans that didn't return.
Obviously, we lost a lot of guys, especially up front. When you look at our roster at the end of the last season to what it's coming back and returning. So obviously they have a lot of opportunity and it's exciting.
But there are dark clouds building off ice. The threat of losing 2 of the Jets' best players grows daily as Captain Andrew Ladd and Dustin Byfuglien are without new contracts and heading to unrestricted free agency next summer.
I'm sure both sides were hoping to have something done by now, but
sometimes it just doesn't work out that way.
To lose both Ladd and Byfuglien without compensation would be disastrous for this team. Keep in mind, Winnipeg is not exactly a hotbed for free agents, so you can't let so much talent go for nothing. And that puts General Manager Kevin Cheveldayoff in a tough spot. Does he consider trading one, maybe both players mid-season and risk the continuity of the team, or do you hope for an 11th hour signing? Decisions that should keep fans as much on the edge of their seat as the high-octane brand of hockey this team plays. Sean Reynolds, Sportsnet, Winnipeg.
Pretend it's just the two of us, okay, Elliot? Ignore him.
That's not possible.
Don't look at him.
Okay.
What's the dirt on Ladd and Byfuglien?
Well, the Ladd situation, it sounds like there's a lot of agreement on term, and they're just working a little bit on the finances, and they'll see if they can get there. The biggest question is that going to carry into the season? The Byfuglien one, we heard there weren't a lot of negotiations, and I really believe, and I know in Winnipeg they're all focusing on Byfuglien and Ladd. I think the contract that really is the biggest question about the salary cap future of the Winnipeg Jets is Jacob Trouba, as much as anything else.
Well, and that's why I think that you'll probably see Ladd re-sign and Byfuglien not. And in Sean's piece, he said it would be a disaster to lose both of these guys and get nothing in return. One will stay. I really believe that Ladd will be the easy one. Byfuglien, unfortunately, it's very dangerous to give a guy a long-term deal that could be in the ballpark of $8 million with a guy with his history.
You did very good staying out of it. You failed miserably. The Jets, we know, own the winter months in Winnipeg. A couple of Blackhawks, however, took over the summer, with Jonathan Toews and Duncan Keith taking the Stanley Cup to Manitoba. The pair have now been part of, get this, half of Chicago's franchise Stanley Cup championships, although Toews did separate himself by hanging out with George Stroumboulopoulos.
How are you, man?
I can. It's a cheat sheet. You can't
look at that. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you, George.
How's your summer?
Not bad, not bad. Yours?
So far, so good. How many times you get on the ice?
You know the answer to that question, eh? None so far.
You played like...
Am I in trouble?
No, I'm not your coach. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Comment avez-vous passé votre journée avec la Coupe Stanley?
C'était occupé, mais c'était super fun. Avec des amis, la famille, à l'hôpital, des petites affaires comme ça.
Do you get to do more the third time around because things you missed the first couple of times?
Continue to...
I can't. That's all I can do.
That's it?
That's all. You could have answered.
Got me going there.
Captain Jonathan Toews, it's your honor to hoist the Stanley Cup.
Let's walk into a season knowing that you're a defending champ.
I think it's another opportunity to try and repeat. We've only had 2 chances so far, so this will be our 3rd one. And
is that the motivating factor, the repeat part?
For sure. I think, we came pretty darn close in 2014. We lost in Game 7 at LA. So there's no doubt, even having lost the teammates that we lost this year, that we can still have a team that can compete this year.
We hear an awful lot about what a captain can mean for a team in the playoffs. What does a captain do? Game 37. In the middle of a week. What is the role of a captain in the dressing room that night?
One of the biggest things I've learned is when things aren't going so well, don't lose your cool. Just stay with it, and eventually you look at the big picture. It's a long enough season that things will kind of, right their course, I guess. And
how do you learn that? Did someone teach it to you? Do people talk you through it?
I think eventually you just pick up on maybe hints from other guys that maybe just settle down once in a while. I'm definitely one of those guys that gets emotional and gets worked up, but I realize in some cases that could work against you, and it's probably been part of the learning curve for me as a captain.
I'm going to fire some rapid fire questions on you. You ready for this one? Okay, here you go. You're totally unprepared for this.
It's not going to be rapid fire answers, I'll tell you that.
Well, listen, you said you can learn, right?
Yeah.
Your dad was an electrician, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean you could rewire my house?
Me?
You?
Not a chance.
No.
I could, but I don't know if anything's going to turn on.
Who's the smartest person you've ever encountered in pro hockey?
I don't know if he's actually that smart, if he thinks he's smart, but he's got a reputation. I'd say Craig Adams.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he went to Harvard, I think, too. So
I'm sure he tells you that every time, too.
He reminds us all the time.
Which non-hockey athlete impresses you the most?
Still to this day, I'd say Roger Federer.
Yeah. Do you ever run into Michael Jordan?
Chicago? No, I've never met him. I mean, he's been to some of our games in the playoffs. Never had the chance. So.
Michael. Come on, 3. He's got 3. He's got the triple goal.
Is he watching this?
Is it true that your mom framed your medals and put them on the wall of your condo without your permission?
Yeah, the World Junior ones. I came home from a road trip in Chicago, one of my first years, and all this. I'm like, I don't need this in the hallway that people walk in to look at this, but that's a proud mother for you, I guess.
Good to see you, man.
Thanks, George. Good seeing you, too.
I'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
You know, that Roger Federer answer there in the interview, that tells me a lot about Jonathan Toews. Just in the sense that if you've ever covered tennis or watched tennis, Federer is the same kind of guy, stoic, but he tries not to show you how much pride he really feels and the fire that is deep inside him. Toews lets it out a bit more, but I really see the comparison between the two of those guys and the way they carry themselves. It makes a lot of sense.
What's Toews' one-handed backhand like?
Probably not as good as Federer's. I'll take the wager on that, yeah.
I'm sorry, are we doing tennis here?
Hey,
you're the guy.
Don't turn that head too fast. The Chicago Blackhawks going through another cap crunch off a championship.
Really no different than it was in 2010 when they just ran out of money for the likes of Versteeg, Ladd, and Byfuglien. And 5 years later, it's like that all over again. And the talent level that much deeper with Odulia, Sharp, and Saad no longer members of the Chicago Blackhawks. But the bottom line here, and everybody said it, as long as you had your top four of Kane and Toews, Seabrook and Keith, you can build championships around that. But with so much uncertainty, guys, around Patrick Kane, I don't think it's a stretch at all to think that he may not be a Chicago Blackhawk this time next year.
Talked about Johnny Gaudreau and 3-on-3 overtime and how that's made for the Calgary Flame forward. Patrick Kane would fit into this.
Oh, would he ever? I mean, I think these players got to raise their expectations for that magical 50-goal mark. I mean, how many more are we going to see? It's been proven that 4-on-4 hasn't decided enough games, and that's the reason why we've gone to 3-on-3. 95% of the games, at least in the preseason, have been decided. We're going to see the best players in the game score a ton of goals, and they're going to be highly motivated to do so. Personally, I'd like to see more 50-goal scorers in this league. I'd like to see guys challenge 50 and 60, 60 and 70 again.
I saw a little bit of players passing the puck back to their goalie during overtime.
Carey Price.
Would you do that to Darren Pang?
Absolutely. I had 6 helpers
I'd
one
be
year.
scared it would skip and go over his head.
Oh, that is wrong.
It's season hasn't even started yet. We're making short jokes.
Pre-season humor.
Around the corner on this Hockey Central season preview show, who will claim hockey's greatest prize next June? Panel predictions are next. The opening week of the National Hockey League season coinciding with the start of Major League Baseball playoffs. Watch the Toronto Blue Jays and Texas Rangers in the American League Division Series on Sportsnet. We've arrived at the time that we make our predictions, and as the host, I get to go first. And with the Montreal Canadiens making it 5 different Eastern Conference champions in 5 years, they'll still fall to the Anaheim Ducks, who win the Stanley Cup.
I got Anaheim winning as well, but they're going to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, a kind of a contrast in 2 teams there.
Oh, way to go out on a limb.
Oh, thanks, big
long
boy.
shot. Dallas out of the West,
That's a long
high-scoring
shot.
team. But the Washington Capitals are the Stanley Cup champions. I like Barry Trotz, and I like this big, burly team.
Elliot.
I hate predictions. Anaheim over Washington.
Okay, you refuse to give the producer an answer, and then you buckle under the pressure?
I was ordered to make a prediction, and I always listen to my producers.
Elliot's facts.
The table has been set, and now we wait for the start of the National Hockey League season. Opening night features a doubleheader on Sportsnet. It's the best game of the world. Sit back and enjoy.